Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the RGVSports.com RGV Hoops podcast. This is the Girls All Area show. We got a lot to run down for you today. We're going to go for the superlatives. You're going to get the first team. You're going to get the second team. You're going to get the final top 10. You're going to get a little bit of a look at next season. You're going to get a lot of stuff today. Some stats leaders, how the season ended out for that. So a lot to cover for girls basketball today, and the guy to do it here is the girls basketball beat writer, John LaFollette.
How's your bracket looking, Greg?
Repug, I think is a good word for it. It's not going well.
I've never heard of Middle Tennessee State before, so naturally I picked Michigan State to go all the way, and lo and behold.
Right.
Sorry, but it's kind of liberal when your bracket is as busted as everyone's appears to be now.
Fun, right?
You just get to have fun. You just get to enjoy the games. You don't really just have to worry about, like for us in our little bracket pool, it's $2, so whoever wins can buy themselves.
Yeah, nobody told me that.
Yeah, whoever wins can just buy themselves, something at Subway or something cheap.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I love Subway. You ready to see Young Thug tomorrow?
Yes, I am. I'm so pumped.
That's your guy.
I'm so pumped to see Young Thug. If you're listening to this right now, be it on the podcast or on Periscope, I'll be at South Padre Island tomorrow seeing my boy Young Thug at Clayton's Beach Bar and Grill. Come say hi.
Everybody go hang out with John. That could be mature.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into this. I would like to start, before we get into anything, let's just say we're going to go in sort of reverse order so that you build up to the superlatives and the player of the year at the very end of the show. So I guess with that in mind, we have to start with sort of your honorable mentions, which is not something we actually did in terms of what runs on the paper
this is
and
just
what goes
verbal.
online. But just who just missed, or who do you feel bad about leaving off, or who didn't make the cut that had a really good season and deserves some recognition?
There's two kids in particular here. I'll start with the first one, I guess. Victoria Izaguirre, a junior point guard from McAllen Memorial. She only played 22 games this year because she had some knee injury. She had to undergo surgery, and she missed almost all of district play. She only played in 4 district games, but despite that, I thought she was the most important player for McAllen Memorial this year, and she averaged 15 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.5 steals. They had other guards who could play instead of her, but not quite at the level that Victoria brought. That she had that little extra in terms of offense and defense, I thought. But obviously kids never pick a time or when they're going to get hurt, so I did have to take ultimately into consideration her injury history here. And because she only played 4 games in district, she was only given honorable mention for the all-district awards that's decided on the coaches there. So unfortunately, due to some circumstances beyond her control, just didn't quite have the season that she wanted. But the silver lining here is she is just a junior. She's got one more year. Hopefully next year we'll talk about her in a different capacity here. But when she was healthy, I was very impressed with what she brought to the table from McAllen Memorial. Just like I said, things didn't quite go her way for her there. So
you said there were 2, and who's the other?
The other one is Ariana Medrano. She is a senior guard for PSJ North. She led the Valley in 3-pointers this year. She made 112 of them.
Wow.
And pretty much all she did was shoot threes. Of all the shots she took, 75% of them were from behind the arc, and she hit 30% of them. So she was the best shooter on a team loaded with shooters.
Right.
And I wanted to give it some props to her, but what left her out ultimately was she was very good in that one role, and she did handle the ball well for them, but she wasn't much of a defender. She was more of a niche player for them. Not to take away from because that one niche that she did, she was very good at, but not really quite the overall kind of resume that you'd expect to see for someone to get a first or second team on. But
hard to be one of the 12 best when you kind of specialize in one thing.
Yeah. She was like the Valley's Kyle Korver, though.
Right.
Yeah,
which is a very good thing.
Yeah. I mean, and there isn't a team in the Valley or the state that wouldn't have a player like Ariana Medrano that can shoot from 3-pointers like that. So, like I said, just overall, I thought there were more impressive players out there. But still, shouts to her. Fantastic season for her nonetheless.
So let's get into some of those players. We'll start with the second team, and the first person we want to talk about is Samantha Gutierrez, a senior guard from La Jolla Palmview. She averaged 14.8 points, 2.8 rebounds, 2.7 steals, and 1.8 assists. And what I'll do is I'll read off the players, I'll read the stats, and then you tell me why they deserve this spot.
Okay. Well, last year she was all Valley first team. We no longer do all Valley, just all area. And I guess we should say right now that for all area, we're just talking about teams from Roma to Mercedes. Brownsville, the Brownsville Herald, they did their All Metro Awards last year, honoring Jordan Rudd and some other players who were worthy of awards. If I could consider Jordan Rudd or some players from Harlingen that had a good season, I would have. They absolutely deserve the individual recognition. But for the parameters here, like I said, we're just doing Roma to Mercedes. So if you're listening to this and you're waiting to hear about Brownsville Harlingen schools, sorry, that's just not the way things work for this show. I apologize. Anyways, back to Samantha. She was all Valley first team last year. She averaged about 17 points a game. She went down a tick in terms of scoring. Part of that was because she had a slightly adjusted role. She had the ball in her hands a little less because Renee Flores, a freshman, came in this year and did some things for them. She was mostly a spot-up shooter. She handled the ball a little less because she is a small girl. I mean, you see her. She's like, you ever see Jamal Crawford or Kobe Bryant play basketball? Their jerseys just kind of hang off of them. Like, that's the way that Sam is. And so they kind of moved her to the perimeter to kind of let their bigs do more of the work down inside and kind of save Samantha's health throughout the season. But even despite the slightly diminished role, she was still a very important part on that Palmview team. I thought she absolutely deserves some individual recognition here. So congrats to Sam for being back-to-back all-area / all-valley.
Right, back-to-back
individual,
all stuff.
Yeah, all stuff. Back-to-back all stuff for Sam there. So.
Next, we have Jada Muhammad, a junior guard from Edinburgh, Bella, the preacher girl. 13.7 points, 5.1 steals, 4.5 rebounds, and 2.9 assists per game for Jada this year.
I was torn on putting Jada on second team. And when we've done this podcast, those who've listened to enough of these know that I'm very high on Jada Muhammad, and as is any other coach that I've talked to. Not just, obviously the people there at Bella Lever, but even talking to the Sherilyn coach and the Rio Grande City coach, they just go on and on about how much, how important she is for that team. But Jada only played in 21 games this year. And the thing, like I just mentioned that, Victoria missed half the season. Jada played most of the district games. And unlike with Victoria, as I mentioned, from McAllen Memorial, when she was out, they had other players that could step in and kind of service that role and kind of be a Band-Aid for that team. Bella didn't have anyone like that. Bella overall finished the season just 20-19, but in the 21 games that, she played 20 games, In the 20 games that Jada played, they went 13-7. And so without her, they went 7-12, and a lot of those losses were by double digits. They weren't even close. So when she was in there, she really was a difference maker. She was counted on to do a lot, to score, to handle the ball, to play defense, to find passes for open shooters and set other people up. She was supposed to do it all for them, and the stats kind of reflect that. So despite having that injury there, it was a high ankle sprain too. She missed like 8 weeks. She was out for a long time. It was a pretty bad injury there for her. But despite that, when she did play, you really could see the difference, what kind of difference maker she was there, and that's why I gave her the benefit of the doubt, despite the injury over someone else like Victoria.
Hopefully next year we get to see what she does in the whole season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on, we have Brianna Pena, sophomore guard from Westaco High, 14 points, 6.4 rebounds, and 6.1 assists, which is near the tops in the Valley, if not the top in the Valley. I think she was
number one in passing in the Valley for assists here. She was a sophomore. My favorite thing about Brianna, aside from just her skill set, is she's famous for the rec specs. She's out there looking like Wilt Chamberlain. She's fun to watch. This is her first year starting for the Lady Panthers. She came off the bench last year. She was their point guard there. Her and Jazz Nunez were the two go-to girls here. Wesleco was spurred by their backcourt, and she had a tremendous season for her first year. They're starting varsity. Like I said, she came off the bench last year. I mean, led the team in score in assists, led the Valley in assists, and also 14 points a game. Terrific defender as well, and she did all that while rocking the rec spec. So a solid season for Brianna, and I think she's only a sophomore, as I said. We got 2 more years to watch her. I think in the next 2 years she's going to be in the conversation up there with players like Jada and Anna Marshall at Sherilyn High in terms of being who's the best Valley girls player, because I think that she expects big things out of herself, and also Coach Fino there at Westaco as well. I've got my eye on Brianna Payne, and she's going to do some big things for these next couple of years.
From the Valley's leader in assists to the Valley's leader in rebounding, we have Maida Garcia, senior forward from McAllen Row, 12.4 points, 13.3 rebounds per game, 1.6 assists, and 1.2 steals.
Yeah, she is the model of consistency here. There was only 5 players that averaged a double-double in the Valley this year, and Maida was one of them. For Row, I should say, they won the 36A championship for back-to-back years. She was the all-district MVP for 36A for back-to-back years as well. This is her second year in a row being on the all-second team. And despite having the impressive numbers there, the reason why I put her on the second team is because Row was a very, very balanced team, and it wasn't too easy for some players to kind of show their individual prowess here, because she was also playing alongside Rayla Rodriguez, who took rebounds away from her. In terms of scoring, they had some dynamic guards like Deanna Spear, who could score as well. So I think if you look at the rest of Row's stats, everyone is kind of on this same little line, but there's one little bump that stands out, and that's Maida Garcia. But she was their most important player, I think, and I think she absolutely deserves recognition. So congrats to Maida Garcia.
Across the way in McAllen, we have Ebony Johnson, junior forward from McAllen Memorial. 13.5 points, 8.3 rebounds, 3.4 blocks, and 1.6 steals to round out the all-area second team.
Yep, and she's tall. She's one of the tall girls. She's 6'1", 6 foot. She's super long. As the season got along, she got a bit more versatile in her skill set. Even though she's tall, she's not too much of a traditional post player in terms of having her back to the basket. but she has really been working on her three-point shot. She's trying to become this all-encompassing player, and if she can put together the offense and the defense and the shooting, oh man, it's going to be she's going to be a nightmare matchup for a lot of teams next year. But I'm looking forward to see what she can do. But for now, congratulations on your second team all-area honors, Miss Johnson.
Moving up to the first team, we have Alyssa Marquez, a senior guard from Mercedes. She was 13th in the area in scoring with 13.1 points per game and didn't rank near the top of any of the other stat categories. So what was it about her that set her apart and made her one of the most valuable players and the most valuable player in that district, according to the coaches?
I think there's two things here. One, I think she was a victim of very fortunate circumstances because you had Jada miss half the season, you had Victoria Zaguirre miss half the season, Sarah Serrano of PSG North, another guard, miss half the season. A lot of guards who were counted on, who were going to be counted on to do a lot for their teams, didn't play the whole season because of varying injuries. She played the whole season, and because of that, I took that into consideration. But also, you know, Mercedes won their district this year. They cakewalked through that district. She was a big part of it. And Mercedes, despite winning so many games, I wouldn't say they were a lights-out offensive team. They didn't really score that much. They won a lot of games on their defense, on their press, and on their zones. That's how they won a lot of their games. I think they only averaged in the ballpark of around 40-some points a game. So she averaged, close to almost half their scoring. Offensively, she was their go-to player. Defensively, it was Jacqueline Flores there who got a lot of her points off of transition steals. But in terms of half-court offense, the ball was going to Alyssa because she was the scorer there. She was the one who was going to be getting buckets for them there. So coupled with the fact that she stayed healthy, she was the go-to player on a really good team, and also the fact that she was district MVP, I think her resume was absolutely good enough to be all the area first team. So congrats to Marquez and the Lady Tigers.
The only team with 2 players to make it is Westlaco High, and the second here is Jaslyn Muniz, senior guard. She was 3rd in the Valley in scoring with 18.8 points per game, and I'm curious, why was she Westlaco's most important player ahead of Pena? What set her apart?
I think experience is one, because she was a senior, and she'd been used to playing starters minutes. As I said, Bree came off the bench. And also, I think she was just able to kind of move without the ball a bit more than Bree. That's one thing that Coach Fino talked to me about after Westlaco's season came to an end. She's going to try and move Bree to the kind of role that Jazz played this year, this shooter that can just kind of come off screens and roam around the court at will, and kind of work without the ball in her hands. So I think the fact that she could kind of be this dynamic player and could play without the ball, coupled with the fact that she had that experience, I think that's what kind of set her apart from Bree here.
Moving over, we have Jayla Santa Maria from Edinburgh High, a sophomore forward. You got to feel good about this one because she was the newcomer of this year last season, so it looks like that panned out all right. She averaged 14.4 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 3 steals. So how did she grow from last season's newcomer of the year to become an All-Valley first teamer?
Statistically, her numbers were about the same between freshman and sophomore years. And another, part of that, as I said, for Maida Garcia from McAllen Rowe, Edinburgh was also a very balanced team in terms of their skill set here. So I expect her numbers to go up a little bit because they're losing 2 seniors there next year. But the biggest difference, I think, was mentally. Last year as a freshman, she was their go-to player even then, and I think that kind of wore on her mentally as the season went along. This year, in the games where I saw Edinburgh High play, one thing that really stood out was just as soon as she got the ball in her hand, she was looking to go. She was looking to score. She was looking to be aggressive. She was looking to be a leader for that team. And I think that's one thing that really helped her kind of have the season that she did. And like I said, I expect her to have another big year next year. I expect her numbers to go up too because they're losing Jennifer Galvan, who led that team in rebounds. I think her rebound might go up a bit. I think her scoring is going to go up a bit as well. So I expect more things from Jayla Santa Maria moving forward.
We have another sophomore who made the first team, and that is Josie Amaya from Rio Grande City. And you have referred to her as the most improved player in the Valley, so I'm curious why. She averaged 19 points per game to be 2nd in the Valley and 11.2 rebounds per game, for 5th in the Valley. So what was it that she improved so much to become such a better player from the year before?
Just everything, really. I wrote a feature on Josie earlier in the year, and Coach Gustavo Valenciano there, he said the biggest thing that stood out was she took the game seriously. Last year as a freshman, she was just kind of there to have fun and kind of laugh and giggle with her teammates, but then something really snapped, and she spent all summer in the gym. There were times where she would call up her coach, and she'd be like, Coach, can you come to school and unlock the gym? I want to get some shots up. She just spent all summer in the gym, playing on traveling teams, and just spending time on the court. And you put that hard work in. It's not hard, Greg. If you practice, you get better at something. Right. And without her, Rio Grande City was a 2-person show here. It was Josie Amaya and it was Adriana Cruz, their point guard there. And Adriana, she was a good in her own right, but she, because she was a point guard, she couldn't impact the game as much as Josie could because she's a 6-footer who can score, she can rebound, she can defend. I think she was their best defender. There were a couple of times where I saw Rio Grande City play an opposing player try and penetrate and go for a layup. And Josie has such great hands. She would just go in there and reach, and she'd lead the break. She wasn't trying to pass to anybody else. She'd lead the break. She's pretty fast for her size as well. She's just such an all-around player. And like I said with Ebony Johnson, they're trying to make her more of an outside shooting threat as well, because that would just continue her ability to be a nightmare matchup for opposing teams. And she's going to have to keep improving, because in this district in 31-5A, next year they're going to have 3 Laredo schools in here, one of them being Figueroa, who defeated Rio Grande City in the playoffs. So I think that's going to be interesting moving forward. She's going to have to keep getting better, because the competition's only going to get tougher.
Another tough player that you'll see in 31-5A next year is the girl that rounds out our all-area first team, and that's Anna Marshall, a junior center from Sherryland High. She averaged a double-double with 14.9 points and 11 rebounds per game. Was that just a matter of her having a size advantage over a lot of people, or what did she do to be able to pull in those numbers?
No, I don't think so. There is no other player in the Valley that I've seen anyway who is more comfortable with their back to the basket. She certainly passes the eye test. If you get the ball to her on the low block, she's so comfortable. She's so aware of where the basket is in relation to her body. Mm-hmm. And even in games, I mean, I've seen games where she was going up against someone with size. It was McAllen Memorial. Yeah, it was the very first game of the season. It was way back in October. You take it with a grain of salt, because teams are missing volleyball kids and whatnot. But still, just one-on-one matchup, big on big. She was taking Ebony to school. As soon as she got it down low, she knew where the basket was. She knew the move she had to make, and it was just a little hook shot, and it was in. It was almost money. And even in losses, Sherryland never lost, rarely lost. I won't say never, but they rarely lost because Anna couldn't score. It was because one of Sherryland's weakness, I think, was guard pressure. If their guards were hounded at half court, they really had trouble making those passes. But Anna still got her points regardless. So once she got the ball, she was super efficient. She absolutely deserves this.
So we've covered the first team, we've covered the second team, and now let's get into the superlatives. We can start with newcomer of the year, and that's going to be Renee Flores from La Jolla Palmview, who averaged 13.3 points, 2.7 rebounds, 2.4 steals, and 1.8 assists per game. Was this something that they saw coming, or was her emergence a surprise for them?
Oh, no, they saw this coming the whole way. I remember Renee's been on my radar since last February, because I wrote a story about Palmview, who last year made the playoffs for the first time in program history. They were only losing one senior, but it was still a senior who was scoring a lot for them, Monica Noyola. She averaged 13 points a game. I was just talking to the coaches, like, how are you going to replace her? Like, oh, we got this girl named Renee. She's in 8th grade. She's really good. We're not worried about it. And like, oh, okay.
Right.
And so I think it wasn't a surprise for them. The surprise would have been if she came out flat and didn't have the season that she did. So this was totally expected for her. And the biggest thing for Renee this year, she had to learn to do a little less. She had to learn how to share the ball. When she was in middle school, she was telling me she was one of those players where, she was the one good player on a middle school team, so she had to be counted on to do everything. Here, she had to learn how to play without the ball in her hand. She had to learn, instead of making the pass to someone who was open, she had to learn how to get open. But one thing that really stood out, I've only seen Palmview play about 2-3 games this year, but in both of those games, there were portions of the game where Palmview's offense really broke down, and they are an offensive-minded team. Mm-hmm. Not to say they can't play defense, but they can put up points on you. And there were certain times where the offense just went away, and when they needed a bucket, it was Renee that got it for them. So she has the ability to play within the flow of the game, play within the X's and O's, but also have that ability to realize, like, hey, things are breaking down. I need to go get my team a bucket. And there was a tournament game against PSG North. Palmview ultimately lost, but the reason they were even in that game was because Renee Flores scored, I think it was like 13 straight points. No one else was scoring but her. So she has that ability for sure, and I'm looking forward to covering her next year as well. So.
Defensive Player of the Year, we have a senior, Ashley Smith from Mission Veterans. She was a pretty good offensive player too, 17.9 points per game, but also pulled in 4 steals. What role did she play in their zone defense, and why was she effective at it?
Well, the zone defense was a new thing. It was a new wrinkle for Mission Vets this year. They used to be a man team. They would do a lot of press. And then I was talking to Coach Ken too, and he's like, yeah, we just switched to a 2-3 zone. And I think what really helped here is that she has such a nose for the ball. She's athletic and fast enough to guard people one-on-one. But she also is smart enough and savvy enough to know where the ball is going to go and just kind of watch the ball as it goes around the court and just follows it and goes and gets the pass and gets an easy layup on the other end. So, excuse me, my girlfriend's interrupting this on my cell phone. So.
Well, at least it doesn't go off loud like Mario's does.
Yeah, so I pulled sorry for the vibration sensation there. Anyways, back to Ashley Smith. I think that was the biggest help here, was just the fact that she was athletic, but also she had that senior savvy, I should say, that kind of gave her that nose for the ball and know where to go on defense.
Coach of the Year was Griselda Fino from Westlaco High. They went 31-7 and advanced farther than any other team. They obviously are pretty used to success over there, but where would you rank this among her most impressive coaching jobs?
Well, I've only been here for 2 years covering this team, and again, this is the fourth time in 4 years they've won a district title, and the third time in as many years that they've made, third time in 4 years that they've made a deep run here in the postseason. But I asked her, I was like, hey, where's this rank? Because last year and in years past, they've had Laura Van Tilburg, a D1 recruit. And they had Angela Villarreal, a D1 recruit. Here, they didn't. Not to say they didn't have talent at all, but they didn't have that kind of talent that really put them a cut above everybody else in the valley. And she's like, this one, just the feeling of accomplishment and pride that her and her staff got from everything they achieved this year. She said it blew everything else out of the water because when you're given to Van Tilburg or Angela Villarreal, it kind of makes things easier for you as a coach. But I think this year she had a chip on her shoulder because even myself, I didn't think they'd be this good. And in that game against Harlingen, I said Harlingen would lose to a Valley team all year. Mm-hmm. They only lost to one. It was Weslaco in the playoffs. And in that game, Weslaco made Harlingen look like a JV team at some points. They were just, they controlled the glass. They got all these outlet passes for easy buckets. They played the 2-3 zone and just dared Harlingen to shoot, and they couldn't do it. And I was really impressed. That win, Fino was always on my radar for Coach of the Year, but that win sealed the deal. There was no other coach. There was no other candidate. This was always Fino's after that win. So congratulations to her and her staff. And it'd be interesting to see how things work here for Weslaco next year because they're only returning one starter. It's Bree. They're losing all those seniors. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but they're switching districts. Now they're in the same district with Harlingen, so they get to play them twice a year. And I was talking to Fino. She's like, yeah, I'm already scouting them. I'm already going to tournaments to see who these kids are. Right. Because Harlingen's losing all their seniors on that team that made them so good these last couple of years. So both of these teams are kind of going back to the drawing board here to see what they can do. But good thing it's only March, and they've got a couple months to figure things out here. Yeah. So that's something to look forward to.
So we've already made it to Player of the Year. Do you want to do a drum roll? You got something for me? Any kind of sound effects you want to make? Okay, good. The Player of the Year for the Monitors All-Area 2016 Girls Basketball Team is Belle Palacios, a senior from PSJA North. She averaged 19.4 points, 8.3 rebounds, 4.7 steals, 2.3 assists, and 1.4 blocks. What were you saying? She was the only girl who was ranked in all of the stat-leading categories?
Yeah, there were only two girls who were in the top 15 in points, assists, steals, and rebounds. It was her and Jordan Rudd. Those are the only two. Of all the stats that I got, and I reached out to every coach in the Valley for all the stats. So if a coach wants to complain, they can't say they weren't. they can't say they weren't given a chance. But those were the only two players that ranked in the top in all those categories.
And you wrote a story on her, obviously, for this, which you can read in the Monitor on Sunday's edition. What was it about her that she was able to develop into this from having a pretty different role last season?
Yeah, I mean, her sophomore and junior year, she was kind of just this spot-up shooter, more of a role player. And then at the second half of last year, her role switched, and she went from this spot-up shooter to this undersized forward, air quotes. She's 5'4", and she's playing a position that most kids are usually about 5'7", 5'6". I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but in basketball, any height you can have is a big advantage. She went from this spot-up shooter, this role player, to someone who had to handle the ball, had to defend the opposing team's best player, had to penetrate, had to look for the open man, and she had to do everything for this team. And I'm going to admit, this was a two-girl race. It was between Belle Palacios or Jasmine Nunez of Weslaco High. Both had tremendous seasons, but the reason why I went with Belle is because with Jazz, she was more of a scorer and a perimeter defender, and because with Weslaco, they had two girls down inside that could do the dirty work. For Belle, she had to score and do the dirty work. She had to pull double duty, and she couldn't take any games off. She had to score, or else PSJA North. Like I said, they're not, like I said about Palmview, I mean, especially with PSJA North, they are not what you would call a very strong defensive team. They want to score, and they want to shoot threes, and they want to run the break, and they want to get easy layups in transition. That's what they want to do. And that was already an added load, a heavy load for her, I should say, but there was an added load in the fact that Sarah Serrano, who I mentioned earlier, she didn't even play half the season. So that just added more weight because as good as Ariana Medrano is, she's just a spot-up shooter in most cases, and so it was just Belle to Ariana in a lot of these games. And I think ultimately she finished with 19 points a game. In games, I did some calculations here. In games without Sarah Serrano, she averaged 22 points a game, rebounded at about a similar rate, but her shooting, she shot like 50% from the field, about 32% from three-point range. I mean, she was doing everything for this team because she had to by necessity. And in our conversations, she was very nervous. She never really felt comfortable in this role because she got beat up a lot. Because when you're 5'4" and you're trying to box out kids that are sometimes 6 feet, I mean, you get in foul trouble a lot. You're getting elbowed a lot. You're taking a beating down there in the paint. It's something she never really felt too comfortable with, but it's something that she knew that she had to do, or else this team wasn't going to go as far as they wanted to go.
In the last couple of years, this has become one of the best teams in the Valley, and they've advanced. Were they the last team standing last year?
Yeah, they were the only team to go to the third round this year. Weslaco was the only team to go to the fourth round. But yeah, they went to the third round again this year, 2 straight years of winning 30 or more games. They won a district title last year. They were the only team in District 31-6A to beat Weslaco in district competition. And, they went 3 rounds deep 2 straight years. They lost to Laredo Alexander both years. But PSG North, Weslaco High, Harlingen High, and Brownsville Reds, those 4 teams I feel like have really kind of been the class of the Valley in terms of girls basketball. And all these teams have questions moving forward going into next year. I think we're going to see a bit different landscape here. But, yeah, like I said, as far as Belle goes, she had a heavy burden to bear and a lot of responsibilities, and she delivered in almost every facet of the game this year. So this is absolutely a very deserving award for her. So congrats to Belle Palacios, Coach Bocanegra, and the rest of the Lady Raiders this season.
Who else did you consider for this spot?
Jazz of Weslaco High.
Anybody else who was on the radar, or are those 2 kind of a cut above?
Nah, I was really down to those 2. It really was. It was either going to be someone from Weslaco or PSG North, and I really thought I really put some time and diligence into this one. It was something I wasn't used to, because last year was always going to be Angela Villarreal, barring some kind of catastrophic injury or something.
Right.
It was always going to be her. So that was an ace I always had in the hole. And here I really debated. I reached out to coaches aside from Weslaco and PSG North. I didn't ask them, but I reached out to other coaches who played against these teams. Like, hey, what's your opinion? What do you think? Because I wanted to get some expertise from people who actually kind of had to scheme against both of these players. So it was really tough. And I should note that in 31-6A, Jazz was the MVP, and Belle was Offensive Player of the Year. From what I understand, that was a 1-person vote. That was not unanimous by any means. That came down to 1. That was a split. That was a 1-vote split. I wonder if there was a way if they could have gotten maybe a co-district MVP or something.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
I've seen it before too. I was wondering if maybe that was going to happen, but the margin between these 2 players is so slim, and Jazz is absolutely deserving of something like this. I ultimately just went with Belle, as I said, because she had a bit more responsibilities than Jazz did. Not to take away from what Jazz did at all, but I just feel like Belle had a bit more responsibilities than Jazz did this year.
What Jazz does get to take away is that her team finishes number 1 in the final top 10. Weslaco High took that spot.
Yes.
Passing Harlingen High for the first time since, was Harlingen High number 1 like the whole year?
They were number 1 all year. They were never number 2. This is the first time that they've not been number 1. It's the very last top 10 of the year.
Now, obviously, it comes down to Weslaco High gets the 56-46 win in the playoffs. But did you ever consider leaving Harlingen High just based on the body of work from the season, or was that a pretty easy call?
If that Weslaco game would have come down to like a buzzer beater or something along those lines, maybe. But Weslaco controlled that game from beginning to end. There was never any. Yeah, Harlingen made their runs; they had their chances, but But for Weslaco, I remember watching that game, and just they looked so focused and so determined and just so in that moment that you could just see the level of preparation they had for that game, and just how badly they wanted to get to that 4th round, because they had a chip on their shoulder all year, and even us on this podcast, I think we all picked Harlingen to win that game. Yeah. I think a lot of people picked Harlingen to win that game, except for Weslaco. Yeah. I don't have a problem putting Harlingen number 2.
Going down the rest of the line, PSJA North 3, Brownsville Veterans 4, Sharyland High 5, Mission Veterans 6, McAllen Row 7, Rio Grande City 8, Edinburgh Bella 9, and McAllen Memorial 10. Doesn't look like there was a lot of change from right before the playoffs. Everything seemed to
Everything's about the same. I think all of these teams made it to the 2nd round, I think, except for McAllen Memorial. And the reason I still left them on there is because they had to play a really strong Laredo United team, I believe it was. No, it was Laredo United South. They almost won that game. They had a 6-point lead with like a minute and a half to go, and they squandered it. They had some turnovers there that really cost them. But there's no shame in losing to a team like Laredo United South to that slim a margin, especially when you're on the road like that. I think the game was in Laredo. So, no, it was at Rome. I'm sorry, it was at Rome. Either way, you get what I'm trying to say. They played a tough opponent really well, and that's why I gave the benefit of the doubt here.
So now that we end the year and we start to look ahead to next season, is there anybody you're going to have your eye on? Any early predictions for teams to watch who might finish near the top next season?
I'm really looking forward to... Okay, for 36A, McAllen Row is graduating. They've owned this district. They're graduating a lot of seniors. I think they're going to have to take a step back. So I think district championship for District 36A next year, it's going to come down to McAllen Memorial and La Jolla Palmview. I think that's going to be really fun to watch next year. 31-6A, some change here because of realignment. Yeah. Really looking forward to Edinburgh Bella and Edinburgh High. That's going to be really fun. I really want to see Jada Muhammad play against Jayla Santa Maria. That's going to be really, really fun. I think in March, I'll say Edinburgh High wins because I think they have a better sense of who they are. Bella's losing a lot of seniors despite still keeping Bianca Cortez and Jada. And 32-6A, Weslaco High and Harlingen, you would assume.
Man, what a district.
It's going to be tough, and you would assume Weslaco and Harlingen are the class of that district. But like I said, both are losing a lot of seniors. They're both going back to the drawing board right now. You know, they've got all summer to kind of figure out things for this team. But I think that 32-6A is a wild card right now. 31-5A.
That's going to be tough, too.
That's going to be tough. I think the district champion is going to be one of those Laredo schools. I don't know how Sharyland or Rio Grande City or Mission Vets is going to fare. We'll have to see what happens there. 32-5A, Brownsville Vets moves down. Brownsville Vets still will have Jordan Rudd. She'll be a senior next year, but they're graduating a lot of role players for them. So I think it's going to be between Brownsville and Mercedes. I give Brownsville the benefit of the doubt just because they still have Jordan Rudd. Alyssa Marquez for Mercedes.
Right.
I'm sorry. She is graduating, and their best player now on paper at the moment for Mercedes is Jacqueline Flores. She is a fantastic defender, and that's how she gets a lot of her points. That's where her offense comes from. But if she's not taking shots at the rim, I don't think that shot's going to go in. Every time I saw her play and she was shooting threes, I mean, she had to shoot threes by necessity to keep the defense honest, but every time she took a long-range shot, I never expected that to go in. So that's something they've got to address. But I think Brownsville is going to be the team to beat in 32-5A next year.
Anything else you want to look back on or ahead to before we get out of here?
I just thought this year, what was so neat about this year, I know I said that Harlingen, Weslaco, Cajun North, and Brownsville were the class of the Valley these last 2 years, but I think this year was fun because there were still some wild cards there. There was you didn't know if maybe Palmview could pull an upset or McAllen Memorial could pull an upset in that district. With 31-5A, once Jada Muhammad got hurt, things got thrown out the window there. That whole district was a mess. There was almost a three-way tie there for the 4th seed in that district. There's just a lot of, aside from just the givens, there were still a lot of things below the surface there that were fun to watch. And I think those things that were below the surface this year are going to be the main things to look forward to next year that I just mentioned in that little district rundown. But no, this was a really fun year, super fun year, and I'm excited to see what happens next year.
So then with that, I guess we're ready to put a bow on the season. You can, as far as your podcasting needs go, we'll be back next week to do this for the boys. We'll give you the same kind of rundown.
Yep.
Maybe we'll also be bringing it to you on a Saturday a little early. It just depends on how everything works out with our schedule in here.
If you have any criticisms of the awards, any people you think were snubbed, or any comments on the show, I will put the onus on me. I made the lists. I was the only one that had these decisions. I discussed with other coaches and people in the office here what they would do, but ultimately the decision was with me. So if you've got any gripes, send them my way. I'm on Twitter @JohnFillet, and my email is jlafollette@themonitor.com. And again, you can find all of this on RGVSports.com. We'll have these links on Twitter and on the monitors.
Yeah, that's true.
This will not be on RGVSports.com. This will be on
the Monitor.
Themonitor.com. That's right, Themonitor.com. So look there. It will be tweeted and Facebook through RGV Sports, but it will not be on the actual RGV Sports site. And you can find this audio for this podcast on all of these stories. I'll put it for all the superlatives in the All Valley. It'll be on there 4 times. So anyone who wants to listen can check this out.
I like this. John already plugged everything. I don't have anything to do now.
Yeah.
You get to just end the show.
You get to end the show. No, this was fun. Like I said, if you got any gripes, send them my way. I'd love to. I'm always down to talk hoops.
Right.
Speaking of hoops, we got to go watch this Spurs-Warriors game because we're recording this on Saturday.
Absolutely.
You got to watch UConn beat Kansas.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
So with that, we'll be back next season, people. You have a good one.
Yep. Have a good one. Thanks, guys. All right. And for all you Periscope viewers, we've got to get back to work. Thanks for joining us and watching us. We'll be back sometime next week.
Yes. If you didn't catch the whole thing, it's going to be on YouTube in a little bit, and the podcast will go up tonight. So
yep.
that's the way to get caught up.
Thanks, guys.